Things just get into his head. He can't get them out of his head and has to have them happen. All of the people around him, what they have to do is figure out some way for him to get what he wants in some way that satisfies him. How do we get his name on the building? The Supreme Court has said he can't have his name on the building. What do we do? Everybody gets yelled at. And
Everybody gets yelled at.
And yelled at viciously. This guy, Trump, is a son of a bitch. This is, why people go into therapy, why people take medication. Their brain keeps spinning. It can't go on to something else. You literally can't move forward.
Michael.
I'm just going to wait for you to stop laughing about what I know. I don't know, but at any rate, Joanna.
I think you do know. I think you know that I'm going to embrace you as my pea-brain colleague, my pea-brain co-host of Inside Trump's Head.
And then I should return and echo what Stephen Chung said about you, but it's actually a word that its use is kind of equivocal these days. I mean, it's a kind of a terrible word.
Well, it begins with R and it ends with D, and we don't have to use it. But clearly Stephen Chung was having a bad day. And
these words are, anyway, the words of sixth graders. I think that's really literally where we are in this discussion. I'm a pea brain, you're an R word, and this is the White House level of intelligence.
And what is Stephen Chung's official title at the White House, Michael? Because I think most people don't know him, though they may have seen him in the background of pictures. He's a large man. You've talked about how his weight was a problem during the campaign, because at one point, I think, didn't he pass out in Union Station?
Yeah, he literally weighs 400 pounds. So, and he is, this is, again, this question, people question my use of the word literally. This is literally 400 pounds. He's the communications director. Now you ask, what is the communications director as opposed to the press secretary? Levitt, who's just left, and we just discussed her on the last episode. This is all part of the White House. One of the main functions in the West Wing is, of course, the communications function. And there are many, many people involved with this. But what it really means now in the Trump administration is people for the president to yell at.
Mm-hmm.
So the president, who is concerned with almost nothing else but the communications function, but how he appears on television, how people talk about him on television, is always focused on these people in a pretty unpleasant, harsh, and constant way.
Well, welcome to our next episode of Inside Trump's Head, where Michael and I try to analyze what is essentially a government of one with outsized influence at the moment, particularly because this president has no interest in what Congress has to say. Please share this episode with your friends, hit the subscription button, and Michael would also like you to hit the bell, which allows you to know when a new episode is coming up. We drop our episodes at 8 o'clock on the evenings during the week, and then at 2 p.m. on Saturdays and Sundays.
So apparently, if you hit the bell, you will be notified that we are dropping an episode. So that seems to be... that would be good for us if you are notified, and perhaps good for you because you won't miss an episode.
You won't miss an episode. All right. So, Michael, a lot going on this week.
But I want to just go back to pea brain and the R word because this is all about the last episode when we talked about, I said that the question I get asked most often is, does Trump wear diapers? Now, curiously, I said there's no reason to believe that that is true. No one has any evidence. And so in all likelihood, overwhelming likelihood, it is not true. But nevertheless, that got me called a pea brain by Stephen Chung because, well, I guess the linking of diapers, just the word diapers, just the suggestion that he might, or even me saying he doesn't wear diapers, repeating the word diapers, is something that Trump finds very wounding. And so therefore Stephen Chung has to respond to that.
Well, and also what's interesting is it is all over social media. There are just endless memes of Trump needing a diaper. People wonder what is inside Natalie Harp's enormous bag. She's always carrying a backpack, or she's got some sort of overnight bag, and the speculation is that there are just, packets of diapers, when in fact, you have pointed out, she's called the human printer because she learned to roar around after him on the golf course with a printer, a Wi-Fi printer, printing out motivational statements for him, pleasant emails, adoring letters from people who no doubt want something.
We asked the question, what does this mean? Nobody knows if this is true. It, I would say, fairly categorically, is not true, and yet it persists. And what we discussed last week, and I think it's kind of a fascinating view of the Trump presidency, is that people look at this guy and say, how has this happened? How is it that he continually defies the laws of nature? A 300-pound man stuffing his face with the worst kind of food, never getting a lick of exercise, and yet he goes on at this energetic level that has affected all of our lives. Matter of fact, made him the subject that I think it's safe to say most people in this country, perhaps most people in the world, think about more often than any other subject. So at least if he were leaking, that would show a sense of some vulnerability, which we all hope is true, that he is vulnerable.
If you've been sitting on a business idea, Shopify makes it easy to make it happen. Everything you need to start selling is included and ready from day one, including the moment your first customer is ready to pay. Shopify checkout helps more of them finish their purchase, and when they come back, their details are already saved. One tap and they're done. Because Shopify handles the setup and checkout, you have more time to focus on growing your business, and Shopify gives you the tools to do it. Shopify powers millions of businesses worldwide, from household names like Mattel and Gymshark to small businesses just getting started. With Shopify, nothing stands between your idea and a real business. So go make it one. Start your free trial at shopify.com/dailybeast. That's shopify.com/dailybeast. Once again, go to shopify.com/dailybeast. Well, I think also perhaps it came from the fact that he spent a lot of time sitting in courtrooms in the 4 years between his presidencies, and people were astonished. You covered those cases. Do you remember him getting up for bathroom breaks? Did the entire court break?
No. I mean, he got up for a bathroom break at whenever anyone else did. You actually couldn't leave, at least in some of these courtroom situations, until there was, and actually, because remember, there's these courtrooms are surrounded by Secret Service, and the security was incredibly tight, so everybody had to wait. Now, I do know that he went into a break room, and that in one of these break rooms, in his trial in New York, which would have been the period he was in a courtroom for the longest amount
Was
of
that the
time.
Stormy Daniels trial?
Yes, and that was when he was convicted. he would go into a break room, and then there was a bathroom. It was a kind of very long room, and at the end of it there was one bathroom, and and there was an instance where one of his lawyers started to use the bathroom, and everyone was like, "Oh, uh-oh," because clearly this was a bathroom for him. Everybody else could go to the bathroom in the halls. Trump could not. So, and then, and Trump obviously took note of the fact that one of his lawyers was using the bathroom, and well, that lawyer did not reappear again.
I've always found it fascinating when offices have a separate bathroom for the boss. It's just a sort of weird, it's a weird thing. But I think also people look at Donald Trump and think, to your point, not only is he not doing a lick of exercise, and by the way, we haven't seen the president since Tuesday. We are recording this on Saturday morning, but he hasn't been out there since Tuesday. And he's actually doing less and less exercise. I mean, I wondered if one of the reasons that he's building the helipad on the lawn of the White House just below the Truman balcony is because he doesn't want to be watched walking to Marine One, because it always gives people pause. His gait changes. And we see him going up and down the steps of Air Force One, and sometimes slipping into food truck one, as we saw in Turkey. But actually, we really don't see him walking at all now. I mean, we see him in a golf cart. We see him going to and from transport, but that's about it.
Well, there's a joke within the White House. The West Wing has two floors, and you know, you have to go up a set of stairs, of course, to get to the second floor. I don't even know there must be an elevator, but I don't know where that is. But you go up I mean, it's not big. You just go up a set of stairs. But in the first administration, and now in the second administration, there has never been an occasion when Trump has been known to go up the stairs to the second floor of the West Wing.
And is that because people don't think he can? I mean, that can't be why, because we do see him going up and down the steps of Air Force One, which is really the time we actually see him exercising. And clearly, he's much frailer than he was. But he's 80, so it's not surprising.
Yeah, I don't I mean, Trump is very much a you go to him kind of guy.
Hmm.
But there is, other presidents go up. I mean, it sort of shows that you know, you're not just a you come to me kind of guy. And Trump has never, he has literally never gone to the second floor of the West Wing.
Yeah,
So,
that is interesting. Well, he's definitely not going to the Kennedy Center at the moment, because the Kennedy Center is closed. It's got a tarpaulin over the absence, apparently, of his name, though we don't know because we haven't seen it. And this is well, we were arguing about this before we started recording. I was saying that he's obsessed by the Kennedy Center because he wants the validation of the artistic community, something he's avoided. And you immediately jumped in and just said, no, he's fixated about the Kennedy Center.
yeah, I don't think that there's any reason. I mean, that would be more if you could find a context here and say, yes, he's resentful. Yes, he wants to he has a view of culture that is a different view than the dominant view of who should be leading the cultural discussion. Okay, that might be something. It's different in this. It is literally that things just get into his head. He can't get them out of his head, and has to have them happen. So we have a situation at the Kennedy Center where the Supreme Court has said, no, you can't. It can't be called the
Can't we call the Donald J. Trump Center? It's
yes,
the Kennedy Center.
yes.
It's named after a president who was assassinated.
And it was, well, it's not just the assassination. There's a set of legislation, a congressional, legislation that has passed Congress and been signed by a president that says the following: that this is the only memorial to John F. Kennedy. This is the name of it. This is all set in stone, and
Uh-huh.
he has tried to. He baldly tried to contradict this and put his name on the Kennedy Center. The court came along and said, no, you can't do that. So there is no way for him to do that, but he can't stop. He literally can't stop himself. So now the proposal is that in big letters it will say the Kennedy Center refurbished, rehabilitated, who knows what
Restored and
else.
renovated,
Yes,
restored and renovated by
by
Donald J. Trump.
right. And apparently very large letters, it will say this. So this is an example of two things: that he has to get what he wants. That if he doesn't get what he wants, he can't move off. He can't go forward. He's stuck in place. And then the second thing is that all of the people around him, what they have to do is figure out some way for him to get what he wants in some way that satisfies him. So I can see, days and days and days of people sitting around talking. How do we get his name on the building? The Supreme Court has said he can't have his name on the building. What do we do?
It's incredible. It's incredible. And imagine being on the board of the Kennedy Center. I mean, Susie Wiles is on the board of it. Alison Lutnick is on the board of it because Howard Lutnick is now supposed to be, the Commerce Secretary is supposed to be sort of overseeing this. Imagine them sitting there. And are they all... just set the scene for us, because we know that Trump is a yeller. He's someone, and it's one of the reasons that we think Caroline Leavitt is leaving, that she is sick of being yelled at and reamed out. And you talked on our last podcast about Sean Spicer, his first White House press secretary, hiding behind a plant, I think, because Trump was
And it's
yelling
literally
at him.
everybody gets yelled at. And
Everybody
yelled at,
gets yelled at.
and yelled at viciously. This guy Trump is a son of a bitch. There's no there's no HR between him and everybody else. He
Great.
is
There's no HR.
unmediated.
Great point.
He is
Great point.
unmediated in this.
So,
And I
so,
think,
so, for example, is the board of the Kennedy Center, are they all just terrified of him? Are they all just frightened he's going to storm in and start yelling at them? Why are they working so hard? Why can't they just say to him, look, the Supreme Court...
this is a misunderstanding of the process that's going on here. It's really his aides coming up with something, and then the board of the Kennedy Center, they don't say, yes, sure. That's their entire function. Yes, sure. So they're really not in harm's way. They're willing to do anything. It's essentially Trump telling them to do something, with the intermediaries being a set of aides who are trying to make whatever is going to make Trump happy, turn that into some policy that then the board can rubber stamp.
And do we know why, for example, it's the Kennedy Center that he's fixated on? He's not a man that wants to go and watch the National Symphony Orchestra. He doesn't like the artists they've had there. Most of the artists have pulled out. We know that he's a man who says Les Miserables Les Mis is his favorite musical. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a fabulous musical, but he's got middling tastes, and the Kennedy Center reaches above. And it really celebrates Jackie Kennedy's brilliance in bringing artists into the White House and expanding the appeal of the White House.
Well, yes, I think I can explain this. None of that. He's not remotely concerned with the content of the Kennedy Center, or the meaning of the Kennedy Center, or the function of the Kennedy Center. He's wholly invested in the Kennedy Center as, I think, at what they call in colleges and universities and other philanthropic venues, the naming opportunity.
The
So
naming opportunity.
and the naming opportunity is clearly a naming opportunity. It's John F. Kennedy's name. So there is a naming opportunity. Why is it not Donald Trump's name? And I think seeing John F. Kennedy's name, a man he has often tried to link himself to, if only
Hmm.
because of all of the women that John F. Kennedy had. Um, and and he has so he saw that and said, I should put my name there. Why isn't my name there? And then the fixation begins. And it's literally a fixation that is a kind of a mental um a mental anomaly. He can't get it out of his head. So he again literally doesn't care what goes on inside. He only cares about the side of the building where a name can go.
Well, also, John F. Kennedy's assassination must have Trump must have been what, 15 when that happened, 1963.
I can
Um,
tell you he would have been 17.
okay, so that must have made a massive impact on him, because it made a massive impact on everybody. I mean, around the world, it was such a remarkable, terrible event. So I wonder if that's also playing into it, and maybe he thinks he's somehow connected to him
Well,
uh,
I
because of
don't
Butler.
necessarily. I mean, I mean, the assassination of John F. Kennedy, was shared in common by everyone of a generation. But
Right, but the rest of us haven't gone on to be president.
I think that the well, others have in the past presidents. So this is not something that connection, the connection to to Kennedy, I think is more actually probably more direct. I mean, it has to do with a kind of glamour, a kind of adulation, which
Hmm.
partly comes from the assassination, and also the women thing is a big deal in his mind. That's the kind of life John F. Kennedy was that kind of cool, rat pack, Frank Sinatra, playboy, um, uh, uh, figure
Glamorous. He was glamorous.
at that point in time with the glamorous wife, and in some sense, Trump has fashioned himself or tried to fashion himself as the discount version of that. Very discounted.
A coupon president. He's a coupon president. That's a wonderful description of him. And obviously, Melania has tried in her way, despite the fact that she barely shows up and we haven't seen her since the FIFA final, which is almost a month ago at this point. Clearly has leaned on the look of Jackie Kennedy for her own inspiration. I mean, certainly during the first administration, at the first inauguration, she was wearing something that felt very inspired by Jackie.
Yeah, but again, it's what gets into his head, and I can't. I mean, I think it's really worth emphasizing that
Hmm.
this is not normal. I mean, when people have these fixations like this, there's I mean, that become this is why people go into therapy, why people take medication. Their brain keeps spinning. It can't go on to something else. You literally can't move forward. I mean, there was another thing I saw this week about Trump and the Navy and
Hmm.
demands he is making about 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 having the Navy revert to an older technology, which the
Right.
Navy
He
has.
wants the battleships or the aircraft carriers to revert to steam catapults as opposed to electromagnetic catapults, which is what they use now. What he says they're too complicated.
Right, and this
As
is
if
and
he would
the
know.
Navy has resisted this absolutely, And this is something that began in the first administration. And even then, people around him, what is this? It just doesn't make any sense. First thing, he doesn't know anything about this. He doesn't, this is a technological kind of bit of like, what are we doing here? We're going back to something that we have long since transitioned from because someone who knows nothing about this suddenly wants us to do this. Nothing makes sense about this except for the fact that he became convinced of this. Someone at some point convinced him of this. And in the first administration, there was a lot of talk about that, like who? How did he get this idea? But having gotten that idea, he can't move off of it.
Well, and I think he got it from a sailor that he met at some point who was complaining about it to him and just said it's all too complicated. And I think, funny enough, I mean, he's clearly the last person you want anywhere near designing a modern aircraft carrier. And actually, I spotted a quote from Mark Kelly, the astronaut and senator from Arizona, who said, "I've launched off the front of aircraft carriers hundreds of times. I have a master's degree in aeronautical engineering and am a test pilot. And even I wouldn't suggest to the Navy how to engineer specific systems on its ships." So the idea that Donald Trump is giving these engineers advice about how to build things is insane. And yet, at the same time, in that weird Trumpian ability, he understands that technology can appear too complicated for people. I think people get in their cars nowadays, especially when you get a new car and you're like, oh, this is too complicated.
I want to stop you there because this is really something else. This is not Donald Trump seeing a greater truth or seeing something that appeals to the ordinary man in a populist sort of way, or Donald Trump having thought about something and wanting to disagreeing with the experts. This is fixation. It's literally something else. It doesn't have anything to do with any intellectual point of view. It doesn't have anything to do with any political point of view. It has to do with something that's gone wrong in his brain. It's a fixation. He can't move off of it. He's just wholly focused in a way, and we've all had this at various times. We all recognize it. It's just a
It's a sort of
spinning thing.
rumination that you just can't get something out of your head.
Spinning, and it keeps you up at night, and then it passes, and I mean, we hope it passes, and then you think, Jesus, yeah, I really kind of went a little nuts on that. This is Donald Trump on so many things. Nothing to do, and it has nothing to do with logic. It has nothing to do even with political logic. It's not him saying, "Oh, I'm going to do this, and this is going to play to voters." This stuff doesn't play. Nevertheless, I mean, the Kennedy Center, very bad politics. It is in his. It's a brain malfunction.
It's a brain malfunction. I mean, we haven't discussed this, but have you signed up for your $100,000 subscription to Truth Social, Michael? By the way, if you give them a 3-year commitment, you can get it for $60,000. This is the ability to get seconds ahead of anybody else the president's musings on Truth Socials, which may or may not be helpful if you're in the financial world. To getting ahead of your competitors,
and may or may not be legal.
Well,
which I think
almost undoubtedly illegal. I think it's just that no one had thought to test it. Why should he be monetizing his own statements with his own company, of which he owns 40%, which is currently about $950 billion worth, although it's all paper money.
You can look at this presidency in a sense by this is kind of the Truth Social presidency. It is almost as if everything was designed to create a social network of one that would be worth $1 billion. How can I get $1 billion? I mean, and I've seen that I've sort of observed the Truth Social thing from its inception, when a couple of of sort of Trump grade entrepreneurs came down to Mar-a-Lago and pitched this idea to him. You should start your own social network. And
And this was after, we should remind people, he was thrown off Facebook, he was thrown off Twitter. I mean, for flagrantly breaking their rules of engagement.
And at any rate, he has obviously been invited back onto those platforms. But
well, and the heads of those networks, the founders of them, all
exactly,
sit around his table.
yes, of course.
How the world changes.
But that idea, I'm going to start this social network, and this went on, and it was difficult to start. I mean, they had to do this. This was a SPAC thing, a SPAC deal that was actually, I think this was still had the distinction of being had to go through the longest regulatory review before they could actually accomplish this. It was hurdle after hurdle, and with no real financial logic. And then there were several other conservative leaning social networks that were starting at this same time. There was one particular Steve Bannon, and then that Steve Bannon started a social network called Getter with with that Chinese guy who went to prison, Miles Kwok, who was a major, theoretically a billionaire, but then went a major fraud. Matter of fact, when Steve Bannon was arrested, it was on Miles Kwok's yacht in Long Island, and I was supposed to join Steve that weekend on the yacht, and then for some reason I couldn't do it. So that was an arrest that I missed, which I regret. But but anyway, they were doing that, and they were having fun. There was a long discussion about merging with Truth Social, and it seemed hard to understand at the time why Trump wouldn't do this. But again, that was when he was farsighted enough to see the ultimate grift here.
That if he were to be reelected, he would be able to monetize the presidency literally just by saying things and charging people.
And well, it also just by in other ways too, advertising, investment in this. It was a way for Truth Social became not just a social media platform, but a platform which could legally funnel money directly into Donald Trump's pocket. And now this other idea that you would pay for, I mean, this seems completely preposterous. But how many things in the Trump world have seemed preposterous and yet now become kind of matter of fact?
Well, I can find, I think I saw the number of people who'd signed up was 10. So that's $1 million a month that have come from nowhere. And obviously this hasn't been tested before. So now it's in front of the courts, and they'll have to figure out, is it legal for a president to literally monetize his own statements, the official words of the president that he gets to monetize?
Yeah, I mean, and let's go back to the phenomenon that this is a presidency which is really run out of a social network. I mean, his most important statements are not delivered delivered at a press conference or behind the desk of the Oval Office, or any of the ways that a president has traditionally communicated his policies and intentions, but on his own 40% owned social network.
And frequently posted in the middle of the night.
Yeah, so
But
he is right. I mean, and it's sort of an outlet. Speaking of a brain malfunction, it is an outlet for his brain malfunctions, which then get to be monetized.
right, and malfunctions that seem particularly acute in the small hours of the morning. I mean, we've done a lot of auditing of his social media posts at the Daily Beast, and he frequently, it's very clear he's not sleeping through the night. He gets 2 or 3 hours before he's suddenly posting again, and he can post up to sort of 40, 50 times in a 12-hour period where he seems frenzied and hyperactive and manic.
So he's a 300-pound man who stuffs himself with poison, who doesn't get a lick of exercise, and also gets no sleep.
What could possibly go wrong? What could possibly go wrong, Michael? In fact, I came across a description of the Kennedy Center in one of the court rulings about it, and I mean, essentially, it's now closed for 2 years for repairs, and it needs some repairs. And one of the statements was the Kennedy Center needs renovation. It's tired, broken, and dilapidated. And I thought, oh, tired, broken, and dilapidated. Who does that describe? Who does that describe?
So that's a description which comes from that's in a Trump filing.
Yes, I think it's. So maybe it was them describing the building, but they inadvertently, I felt, also
Yes. Well,
reminded of who was in charge of this sort of fiasco at the Kennedy Center. And of course, we remember his friend Rick Grenell, the former ambassador to Germany, who was quickly put in to run it. You always maintained because he was gay and he'd be able to deal with artists, and who quickly left. I mean, it was too much even for Rick Grenell. And of course, the staff who are left there have no idea whether or not they have jobs. Tons of people have left. As we've said before, loads of artists just pulled out and said, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to appear there. The National Symphony Orchestra, which is, a jewel in the crown of the Kennedy Center, is no longer playing concerts there. They're playing concerts elsewhere. But this is it's just so unnecessary. So
no, well,
unnecessary.
it's yeah. I mean, essentially, he has broken the Kennedy
Yeah,
Center.
he's ruined it. He's ruined it.
Yeah. There is no Kennedy Center, and there's a kind of thing. There's a kind of this institutional war that he is in, um, and this is with institutions throughout the American government, institutions throughout American culture, the Smithsonian, for instance, another institution that he has taken on. But then an institution which he has been fighting from the very beginning, and which came to um, there was an important court decision this week, is Harvard,
Mm-hmm.
which from the first of in from the first days of this administration, he has set out to attack the Ivy League, really. I mean, a set of institutions, elite universities that he believes have been somehow are the antithesis to Donald Trump, MAGA, and his retro view of America. And this contains all the DEI, all of that stuff, highly symbolic for Donald Trump. But Harvard, especially, again, has become this fixation. He loses court case after court case after court case, and nevertheless can't get away from it. So any other politician, politics is like, if it's a loser, you really don't want to keep pursuing it.
Right,
You
move
don't
on,
want to
move on,
keep,
change
yeah,
the subject, find
yeah,
another cause.
right, exactly. You don't want to remind people that you keep losing. You don't want to go on and lose. Um, but here he is, and I mean, this week the court dismissed his claims. He had kind of broad-based claims, essentially suing Harvard for anti-Semitism. Um, and while there are reasonable underlying there's an underlying logic here. His the legal attack was flawed in so many ways, overbroad, ridiculous, that it was thrown out. And this is not the first time it's been thrown out.
His ability to rise from losing, to double down on losing, as you've often pointed out. But do you think it will be held up by other, or not held up, but do you think it will be used by other politicians? I was wondering, Kamala Harris keeps emerging as a leading contender for the Democrats for 2028. Is Kamala Harris looking at what happened to Donald Trump and thinking, I can do that? I only had 107 days. I didn't differentiate myself from Biden. Now I know how to do this properly. Donald Trump lost an election. He came back. I can do that too. Does he act in this situation as encouragement for other candidates who've lost, do you think?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I mean, I've always my view has always been Trump is anomalous. He is unique. He is like no other politician we've ever seen, and probably no other politician we will see. I think Kamala Harris is just like, well, I got nothing better to do. Let's see if I fly. And I think that she won't, and I don't think ultimately she will run. And if she's at the top, she's at the top of polls now. First thing, she's marginally at the top because
Well,
of
because of name
name
recognition, she did
recognition.
it
Yeah,
before. Right. And
yeah.
we don't know who else will come out. But I
But
just
I don't
wondered.
think, his again, and I think it's important to understand Trump's path defies nature.
Hmm.
It defies nature because that's not how we are. That's not how people are. People, first thing, they can't take what he's taken: 4 criminal indictments, 2 impeachments, disgrace, and 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 with almost very little impact on him, very little emotional impact. Um, and it actually becomes the opposite thing. All of these things that would t- that would beleaguer any other human being inspire him.
Yeah, it's amazing that they would fell other people. They would fell other people. They would withdraw, humiliated, depressed, their tail between their legs, and instead it fires him up. His anger.
Yeah, and it's that kind of thing. If you say I can't have something, then I am like a child throwing a tantrum, and I will demand. And I'm a child, the child throwing a tantrum who you would get into some kind of therapy because you would understand that it was beyond what
Beyond normal.
a normal level tantrums. Back to the Kennedy Center. He must find some way to get his name on it. Even though the Kennedy Center is a shell and may never open again, it's a wall and it must have his name on it. And people around him in the West Wing will understand this and say, well, he must have his name on it.
Well, and as you say, this is what worked for him in business, slapping his name on any building that would take it, slapping his name on steaks, on champagne, on water, on university. It didn't really matter if the thing didn't work. It was just his name out there. It worked as branding, and it's worked to get him elected as president a second time.
But then follow that logic out. All of this, which was a business strategy, then tips over into fixation.
Hmm.
So there was a logic at some point. I mean, it was a sort of vulgar logic to putting his name on everything. Now there is no logic, except that the only logic is that he must have it because he must have it.
Well, another place that he's putting his stamp is obviously the White House. We have talked extensively about the ballroom this week in replying to questions from the Supreme Court. I was astonished to see that the White House said the ballroom is 65% complete. Can that possibly be true?
No, it cannot possibly be true. But
Very
what
quick
it
response.
but what it is that they are pushing as fast as possible into some territory which becomes fait accompli.
Right, right. Which again is what you said that, and we've seen this, we've seen it walking around the streets of New York. You see it in areas which are heavily zoned, that people just get on, build the building because it's harder to get it taken down.
Right, but now he's going to do something else. So you build the building and it's there and yeah, you can't take it down. But he is now going to they're not going to build the building. They're going to lie about the building being there. And then they're going to say, well, we can't take this building down because it's 65% done, it's 85% done, but all there is basically a hole.
Well, there's definitely some walls, right? When I was trying to see how much you could see. You can see a lot of steel pillars. You can see walls going up. There's definitely building work happening.
Well, that's what they're trying. Yeah, they are rushing to do this, but
Well, it
they are
definitely didn't
going
look.
to
It
say
didn't look 65%
no.
done.
They just have to get to the point in saying it's done, but they're not going to get to that point. So what are they going to do? Well, they're just going to say it's done.
Mm-hmm. He also released images of the gold seals that they were going to put on the ballroom, which obviously very much indicate that it's Trump's ballroom.
Extraordinary. And so, which leads to this other question of really, kind of fascinating is what's the next person going to do?
Yes. What is the next person going to do? It's so interesting, isn't it? Because you don't want to waste public money. You also don't want to make it a priority. And yet you might want to reverse it so that it looks like it used to. Goes back to the original architect's version of a more humble building to represent the people's house, not a palace.
Yeah,
I mean, he
no,
says it's inspired by Versailles, which is completely the opposite of what the White House is supposed to be. But Donald wouldn't know that because he doesn't read history and he just saw it and thought it looked glamorous and gaudy and rich, right? Symbolizes richness, which he's become since becoming president.
It's just symbolize I want what I want. I mean, in a way, it has no other symbol. I mean, it's a ridiculous symbol. It's I mean, it's something that it's incredibly unpopular. It's incredibly gaudy. Everybody is trying to stop him from doing it. He has to go back to court again and again and again. Again, that idea of pursuing his own failures, and for what reason? Only because I want it.
Well, who do you think he wants to replace Caroline Levitt? We talked about her on Thursday. I heard from sources yesterday who said that Scott Jennings, who was definitely one of the leading contenders, doesn't want to do the job because it's going to cost him. He's actually making more money with his podcast and his various media appearances, and he doesn't feel like giving that up to go into the White House. And also be a difficult time to go into the White House. Assuming the Democrats win the midterms, you're going to start getting subpoenas. You're going to have to deal with it all. It doesn't sound as much fun as it probably has been for Caroline Levitt.
Well, understand that operation. Scott Jennings would have been the one that leaked that he was a contender for the job, and then was the one who leaked that he was not going to take the job.
Fair. So who do we have any sense of who is going to take it? Is it going to be Anna Kelly, Caroline Levitt's number two?
I don't know. I have no information on that point. I would imagine it will be a young woman, however.
Well, it's not going to be Mitch McConnell, who's also not been seen, like the First Lady. First Lady's not been out since FIFA, and that's half as much as a Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell is now a unit of time in the way that Scaramucci was a unit of time. A Mitch McConnell is now 2 months. It's growing. Mitch McConnell's not finite. We're waiting to hear from him, but it's 2 months since anyone's actually heard from him.
We should recall that the Scaramucci unit of time was the 11 days of Anthony Scaramucci.
11 days of Anthony Scaramucci.
Of which he has parlayed into quite a career.
Quite a career. Yes, and in fact, we have him on our podcast on Sunday talking about Trump's women. He had good observations.
Well, everybody has observations. 11 days is all I can say. 11 days.
11 days, but of course he worked on the campaign with him before then, so he spent a lot of time around Donald Trump.
Yeah, he really didn't work on the campaign. I mean, I used to see him in the sometimes in, and anyway, let's
whatever. I love Anthony. I'm very happy to have him on. How can you not love Anthony? He's fantastic. Also machine gun lipped. So we thought it might be useful to have a check-in on the odd midterm race, and there is a very fun ad that's been dropped against Trump's endorsed favorite candidate in Texas. Remember, he primaried John Cornyn, the long-serving conservative senator in Texas. Cornyn got booted out in favor of Ken Paxton, a man a former attorney general who was impeached in Texas, and he's up against James Tallarico, the Democratic candidate, and a very, very tight race. But I thought this ad looked fun to show.
His wife filed for divorce on biblical grounds, so he honored America's 250th birthday in London, the country we specifically left. A Texas town asked him if they could pause the data centers. 6 months and $450,000 later, he's still deciding. He is the most corrupt politician in the world.
I don't always need a lawyer, but when I do, even he votes for the other guy. Stay loyal, my friends. Dan?
The most corrupt politician in the world.
I wonder how effective this is then. Does everybody know this is AI? Do we begin to discount this kind of advertising because it's AI? That's a question. But the other thing that I think is important to say is that this race it's important, obviously, for who controls the Senate.
Mm-hmm.
But for a Republican to fall in Texas would have, I think, significant reverberations throughout the idea of throughout the Donald Trump. It would cast the second 2 years of the second term in an entirely different light. I think this one particular race, the vulnerability of Donald Trump, the failure here of Donald Trump, and it would be the failure on two levels. It would be the political failure of backing this guy, and then the fact that Trump could not get what he wants, could not push him over the line.
Yes, and also, as you said about the Dr. Al-Sayed winning the Democratic primary in Michigan, is there enough of an anti-Donald Trump movement to get rid of, to push the marginal states through? I mean, Texas wasn't a marginal state, but now it looks like it could be a marginal state,
Right.
a swing state.
No, I mean, yes, that goes precisely to the point. Is
he the catalyst?
This election, yes, how much of this election is directly against Donald Trump?
So clearly, Texas, a huge race to watch, as is Maine, as is Michigan.
As is AI advertising.
As is AI advertising. I guess the impact of that ad is really the humor and the one message that this is the most corrupt politician in the world, leaning into Donald Trump's exaggeration for everything, using his language.
I think it will be interesting if whether the humor registers or whether the manipulation registers. I don't know. I thought it seemed funny to me, and then I thought, well, wait a minute, this is all fake.
Does it matter if it's fake if the messaging is right? That he was impeached as Attorney General, that he's corrupt, that he took $450,000 for enabling data centers in Texas?
Well, it could the fakeness of it could actually then work to his favor, in which you think about the fakeness but not about the message. I don't know. I mean, this is the big question.
This is the big question. I was talking to a comedy writer from the Stephen Colbert Show who, has been laid off because Colbert was ended by CBS. But he said that a lot of his former colleagues are getting calls from politicians who want help going into this cycle because they're trying to make the ads different and stand out and do a little bit of what I think Gavin Newsom's been successful at.
Well, we'll see.
We'll see.
That does not sound. That sounds like what the Democrats would do. It sounds like the mistake that Democrats make. But let's see.
They may not need to do anything if Donald Trump carries on as he's doing right now. Michael, as always, a pleasure to see you, even on a Saturday. Even on a Saturday, as we hurtle into the weekend.
Always on a Saturday.
Always on a Saturday. We'll be back on Tuesday. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. Please share it with a friend. Leave us a comment on YouTube. We read them all. We love your comments. Do you want to thank our team?
Rachel, Ryan, Neil, John, Heather.
Very good.
That's it.
That's very good. Without whom? I will see you on Tuesday. So the good news is we have so many B-Beast tier members now. There are too many names to read out, and we really appreciate your support.